The scandal surrounding Father Vianney rippled through the community like a violent storm, shattering trust and igniting whispers in every corner. Parishioners who once revered him as a symbol of purity now avoided him in the streets, their eyes filled with suspicion. The weight of Rebecca's accusation hung heavy over him, dragging his once pristine reputation through the mud. Father Vianney sat alone in his modest quarters, his head buried in his trembling hands. He had spent years dedicating his life to the church, becoming a pillar of strength for his parishioners, and now, with a single accusation, it all seemed to crumble. Every sermon, every confession, every prayer suddenly felt meaningless. The bishop called another urgent meeting. Father Vianney, he began, his voice grave. The DNA results confirm Rebecca's claim. This is serious. The church cannot ignore it. But I am innocent, Father Vianney said, his voice breaking. I swear before God, I've never touched her. This has to be a setup. You may believe that, the bishop replied, but the evidence is damning. You must understand the church's position. Until we can determine the full truth, we must suspend you from your duties. The words hit him like a thunderbolt. Suspended. After decades of service, he felt his world tilt, the foundation beneath him cracking. Meanwhile, Rebecca reveled in her success, but her joy was tinged with bitterness. He had finally managed to tether Father Vianney to her through the scandal, yet his disdain for her was palpable. Instead of love, she saw disgust in his eyes whenever they crossed paths. Why won't he just accept me? She sobbed to Jonah one evening. I did everything. I've given him a child, his flesh and blood. What more does he want? Jonah, who had always been the more pragmatic one of the two, tried to calm her. You wanted him to notice you, and now the whole world knows your name. But you have to be careful, Rebecca. People are starting to talk. They are questioning why you didn't report the rape earlier. Stay strong, but don't let them dig too deep. Rebecca clenched her fist. He'll love me eventually. He has to. Once the baby is born, you'll have no choice. The church community was deeply divided. Some believed Rebecca, sympathizing with her cheerfully, recounting of the alleged assault. Why would she lie about such a thing? They whispered. She's young, vulnerable. Oh, poor girl. Others, however, were skeptical. Father Vianney, a rapist, impossible, they argued. This reeks of a trap. The woman is hiding something. The tension was palpable during Sunday Mass, now led by a substitute priest. The pews were half empty, and the once vibrant choir sang in subdued tones. The parish felt like a ghost of its former self, consumed by doubt and scandal. Father Vianney retreated into himself, spending hours in prayer. He begged for strength, for clarity, for some sign that God hadn't abandoned him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Rebecca's face twisted with tears, heard her accusation echoing in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't telling the whole truth. One evening, as he knelt before the altar, a faint voice startled him. Father! He turned to see Chike, his former cook, standing in the shadows. I shouldn't be here, Chike said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. But I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. Something about all this doesn't sit right. Father Vianney frowned. What do you mean? Chike hesitated, then stepped closer. The money I received after the accident, it was anonymous, but it felt too convenient, and now, hearing about this scandal, I can't help but wonder, was I pushed out for a reason? Someone didn't want me here, Father. The priest's heart raced. You think Rebecca and Jonah had something to do with it? Chike shrugged, but his eyes were heavy with suspicion. I don't know, but if they did, they went to great lengths to get rid of me. Maybe you should start asking why. As her pregnancy progressed, Rebecca's obsession with Father Vianney deepened. She began attending Mass again, sitting in the front pew and staring at him intently. Despite his suspension, she acted as though they were a couple, telling anyone who would listen about their relationship. "She's unhinged," whispered one parishioner. "There's no way Father Vianney would fall for someone like her." But Rebecca didn't care. In her mind, the baby growing inside her was proof of their connection, and she was determined to make him see it. One day, she showed up at his residence unannounced, clutching her swollen belly. "Rebecca, you shouldn't be here," Father Vianney said, his voice firm. "I just wanted to talk," she replied, her eyes pleading. "Please, Father, I know you're angry with me, but I love you. I've always loved you. This baby is a gift from God. Can't you see that?" Father Vianney stepped back, his skin crawling. "Rebecca, you need help. This isn't love, it's obsession. You have ruined my life with your lies. Please, leave me alone." Rebecca's face twisted with rage. "Lies? You think this is a lie? Fine. Keep denying it. But when this child is born, you'll see. You'll all see." As the months passed, the tension in the parish only grew. The baby's due date approached and with it, the promise of further revelations. Father Vianney knew he couldn't rely on the church alone to clear his name. He needed an answer about Rebecca, about Jonah, about the mysterious events that had led to this nightmare. And Rebecca, she was more determined than ever to make Father Vianney hers, no matter the cost. But the truth has a way of coming to light, and when it does, it will shake their world to its core. The months dragged by, each day heavier than the last for Father Vianney. He found himself in an unimaginable position, accused of a grievous sin, ostracized by many in his parish, and yet unable to fully abandon Rebecca and the unborn child. Despite the lies, the scandal, and the doubt, he couldn't ignore his priestly duty to care for all, even those who had wronged him. Rebecca's pregnancy had become the talk of town. As her belly swelled, so did the intention in the community. Many still whispered about Father Vianney's alleged role, while others began questioning the circumstances surrounding Rebecca's claim. Regardless, the child's arrival loomed, and with it, the potential for more chaos. One cold evening, weeks before her due date, Rebecca arrived at the rectory unannounced. She was visibly distressed, her eyes puffy from crying. "Father Vianney," she began, her voice trembling, "I need your help. I don't know what to do." Father Vianney stiffened, his instinct to turn her away warring with his compassion. "Rebecca, you shouldn't be here. This isn't appropriate, please," she sobbed. "I'm scared. The people at the clinic keep asking questions about the baby's father. I don't have anyone else to turn to. I thought you might understand." Despite everything, Father Vianney couldn't ignore her desperation. His heart ached not for Rebecca, but for the innocent child caught in the middle of this nightmare. "I'll speak to the clinic," he said at last, his tone reluctant but firm, "but only to ensure you and the baby are cared for. This doesn't change anything, Rebecca. You made your choices." Rebecca nodded, her tears falling freely. "Thank you, Father. I promise I'll make things right someday." Weeks later, the call came in the dead of the night. Rebecca had gone into labor, and complications had arisen. Doctors at the clinic, overwhelmed and under-resourced, reached out to Father Vianney. "We know this is unorthodox," the head nurse said over the phone, "but she keeps asking for you. She's in a lot of pain, and we are concerned about her mental state. Can you come?" Father Vianney hesitated, clutching the rosary in his hand. He felt torn between his tarnished reputation and his duty as a man of God. In the end, his compassion won. When he arrived at the clinic, Rebecca's scream echoed down the hallway. The staff led him to her room, where she was breathing in agony, her face pale and glistening with sweat. "Father," she gasped, reaching out to him. "You came?" He took a step closer, but kept his distance, his expression stern. "I came for the child, Rebecca, that's all." Rebecca's face twisted with pain, but she nodded. "I don't care. Just don't leave me." The delivery was long and grueling, the air thick with tension. Father Vianney stood at the edge of the room, reciting prayers under his breath. When the baby's cries finally filled the air, he felt an overwhelming wave of relief. The baby, a girl, was small but healthy. The nurses placed her in Rebecca's arms, and for a moment the room seemed to hold its breath. Rebecca looked down at her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "Isn't she, Father?" Father Vianney said nothing, his eyes fixed on the tiny bundle. Despite the turmoil surrounding the conception, the child was innocent, a pure, unattained soul, caught in the crossfire of human sin. But as he watched Rebecca cradle the baby, a sense of unease crept over him. Something about the situation didn't sit right. In the days following the birth, Father Vianney made arrangements to ensure Rebecca and the baby were cared for. Parishioners who had remained loyal to him donated clothes, diapers, and formula. "I don't understand why we are helping her," one parishioner said, a tone sharp. "After everything she has done, because the child deserves better, and because forgiveness is the foundation of our faith," another parishioner answered. Despite his efforts, the rumors persisted. Some saw his actions as a proof of guilt, while others admired his unwavering commitment to his values. As the weeks passed, Rebecca's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She became possessive of the baby, refusing help from anyone but Father Vianney. Her obsession with him deepened, fueled by the belief that their child would eventually bring them together. "Why won't you come visit us more often?" she demanded one day when he stopped by the clinic. "We are a family now, Father. You can't just abandon us." Father Vianney's patient wore thin. "Rebecca, you need to focus on being a mother. This obsession of yours is unhealthy. I'll help where I can, but don't mistake my kindness for anything more." His words stung, but Rebecca refused to accept them. In her mind, the baby was proof of their bond, a bond she believed would eventually force him to choose her. After Rebecca's troubling behavior became evident, Father Vianney realized that the child was caught in a web of lies and inability. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, not just as a priest, but as the child's father. Though he had initially resisted the idea, his feelings had shifted since the baby's birth. Her name was Chisom, meaning "God is with me," a name Rebecca had chosen. The first time Father Vianney truly held her, something shifted in him. A tiny hand gripped his finger, and for a moment all the accusations, the shame, and the rumors faded. Chisom's eyes, large and curious, mirrored his own, and a smile lit up a part of his soul he hadn't known was missing. Despite his growing bond with Chisom, doubts lingered in Father Vianney's mind. Was he truly her father, or was Rebecca's story another one of her manipulations? With the help of Chike, who had become his confidant, he arranged for a second DNA test to be conducted in secret. Chike took a strand of the baby's hair and one of Father Vianney's own, delivering them to a trusted doctor in another town to avoid suspicion. The days waiting for the results felt like an eternity. When the results finally came in, the truth was undeniable. Father Vianney was Chisom's biological father. The news left him reeling. Despite the circumstances, a part of him felt a quiet joy, a connection to this innocent child that no lie or accusation could sever. Knowing the truth deepened his love for Chisom, but it also increased his sense of duty. Rebecca's behavior was growing more unstable. She became possessive and controlling, often refusing to let anyone else hold the baby at times. Her paranoia spiraled into anger, and she lashed out at anyone who suggested she seek help. One day, as Father Vianney visited to drop off supplies, he found Rebecca shouting at the nurse who had suggested Chisom needed vaccinations. The baby was wailing, and Rebecca clutched her tightly, her face flushed with rage. "Rebecca," Father Vianney said sharply, stepping into the room. "That's enough. You're scaring her." Rebecca turned to him. her expression wild. "You are trying to take her away from me. You don't think I'm a good mother." "But I am." She's mine. "Vianney, she's ours." Father Vianney's heart sank. It was clear that Rebecca's grip on reality was slipping. He knew he had to act, not just for Chisom's sake, but for Rebecca's as well. Father Vianney quietly sought advice from a lawyer, explaining the situation without revealing his identity as the father. The lawyer advised him to document everything: Rebecca's behavior, her outburst, and her neglect. With enough evidence, he could petition for custody and ensure Chisom's safety. This step was agonizing for Father Vianney. As much as Rebecca had wronged him, he didn't want to destroy her. He prayed for guidance, asking God to help him make the right choices. In the meantime, Father Vianney began preparing for the possibility of raising Chisom himself. He reached out to a trusted parishioner, an older widow named Mama Ada, who had experienced caring for children. "Mama Ada," she said one evening, "I may need your help soon. There's a child, a little girl who needs stability, love, and care. Would you be willing to help me?" Mama Ada smiled warmly. "Of course, Father. God placed me here to serve. Whatever you need, I'll be there." One evening, Father Vianney visited Rebecca's apartment. Chisom was in her crib, cooing softly. While the room was a mess, clothes and bottles scattered everywhere, Rebecca was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the wall. "Rebecca," he began gently, "we need to talk." He didn't respond at first, but then she looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and despair. "What now, Father? Come to tell me I'm not good enough again?" "That's not what this is about," he said, sitting across from her. "Rebecca, I've seen how hard this has been for you. I know you're struggling, but Chisom deserves a stable home, a safe environment." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "You're trying to take her away from me?" "I'm trying to help both of you," he said, his voice steady. "You need help, Rebecca, and Chisom needs someone who can give her the care and stability she deserves. Let me help." For a moment, Rebecca seemed to consider his words, but then she shook her head vehemently. "No, she's my daughter, Vianney, mine." Despite Rebecca's resistance, Father Vianney continued to visit, bringing supplies and checking on Chisom. Each time he held her, he felt his resolve strengthen. This child was his, and he would do everything in his power to protect her. As the weeks went on, Rebecca's behavior worsened. The parish began to notice, and whispers of her inability spread. Father Vianney prayed every day for strength and guidance, knowing that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But no matter what, he vowed to be there for Chisom. She was his daughter, a part of him that no one could take away. Rebecca's parents, Chief Uchenna and Lady Ifeoma, returned to Nigeria after months abroad. Chief Uchenna had traveled to the United States for a minor spinal cord surgery, and their extended stay for his recovery left them oblivious to the storm brewing back home. Upon hearing of Rebecca's pregnancy and the scandal involving Father Vianney, they were determined to uncover the truth. One evening, they called Rebecca into the living room. Chief Uchenna, still recovering, but exuding his characteristic authority, gestured for her to sit. Lady Ifeoma, her face set in a mix of worry and disappointment, wasted no time. "Rebecca," she began firmly, "enough is enough. Tell us the truth about the child and the accusation against Father Vianney. We have heard all kinds of rumors, but now we need to know the truth from you." Rebecca, visibly nervous, avoided their eyes. She wrung her hands together, her lips trembling as tears threatened to spill. "Rebecca," Chief Uchenna said, his voice low and deliberate, "don't lie to us. This family has been through enough. Speak now." Rebecca burst into tears, her sob filling the room. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I lied. Father Vianney didn't rape me." Lady Ifeoma gasped audibly, her hand flying to her chest. Chief Uchenna's face darkened with disbelief. "What do you mean you lied?" he demanded. Rebecca continued, her voice shaking. "I planned it. I inseminated myself," she confessed, her voice breaking under the weight of her admission. "It was all me. He had nothing to do with it." The silence in the room was deafening. Lady Former sat down heavily, her hands trembling. Chifuchena closed his eyes, his face a mask of anguish. News of Chifuchena and Lady Former return reached Father Vianney through a mutual acquaintance. Despite the risk of further confrontation, he requested a meeting with them. "I need to speak with Rebecca's parent," he told Chike. "He deserves to hear my side, and I need to ensure Chisom's future is secure. This is bigger than any of us now." When Father Vianney arrived at Uchena's residence, the air was tense. Chifuchena welcomed him into the study, where Lady Ifoma joined them shortly after. "Father," Chifuchena began, his tone measured, "we appreciate you coming. We also owe you an apology for everything that's happened." He was in disbelief. "She planned it," he repeated, his voice barely audible. The betrayal and confusion cut deeply. Despite everything he had endured, he had never imagined that Rebecca had orchestrated the entire situation this way. Father Vianney's expression hardened, his usual calm demeanor cracking under the weight of the revelation. By now, Rebecca was then called into the room. She turned to Rebecca, his voice filled with both anger and pain. "Rebecca, is this true? You planned all of this, and in this manner?" Rebecca nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, Father, I did. But it wasn't out of malice. It was because she broke down, unable to continue." "Speak," Chifuchena urged. "Explain yourself." Through her sobs, Rebecca confessed, "I did it because I love you, Father Vianney. I've loved you for so long. You are everything I've ever wanted. I see the way people admire you, the way you carry yourself with grace and kindness. You've always been my ideal man. I couldn't bear the thought of you never noticing me. So I did what I did, not because I wanted to hurt you, but because I wanted to feel connected to you, even if it was wrong." The room fell silent, except for Rebecca's weeping. "I love you so much," she continued, her voice raw with emotion, "so much that I would lay down my life for you. I know I've done something terrible, something unforgivable, but my love for you was never a lie. It's the truest thing I've ever felt." Her confession struck a chord in everyone present. Lady Former wiped tears from her eyes, her stern exterior softening. Chifuchena turned his face away, unable to hide his emotion. Even Father Vianney, who had been resolute in his anger, looked visibly shaken. "Rebecca," he said after a long pause, his voice breaking silently, "love is not selfish. What you have done is not love, it is desperation. But I can see how much pain you are in, and I forgive you." Rebecca fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Father. I'm so sorry." The revelation of Rebecca's confession spread quickly through the parish and beyond. When the news reached the diocese, it sent shockwaves through the clerical hierarchy. The bishops, already grappling with the fallout of the scandal, convened an emergency meeting to address the situation. Father Vianney was summoned to the bishop's residence, where a council of senior clergy awaited him. Bishop Michael, the head of the council, spoke first. His tone was measured but firm. "Father Vianney," he began, "the situation had brought immense scrutiny to the church. While Rebecca has confessed, and you have been vindicated of the accusation, the fact remains that you are now the biological father of a child. This revelation complicates your position as a priest." Father Vianney, seated before the council, clenched his fist under the table. He had anticipated a difficult conversation, but the weight of their judgment still stung. "Your Grace," he said, his voice steady, "I understand the gravity of the situation, but Chisom is my daughter. I cannot, in good conscience, abandon her. She is innocent in all of this." Bishop Michael exchanged glances with the other bishops before continuing. "We understand your feelings, but the church cannot afford further scandal. The council has deliberated, and our decision is as follows. You must distance yourself from Chisom. Her mother and grandparents are capable of providing for her. If you comply, the suspension will be lifted, and you may return to your priestly duties." The words felt like a blow to Father Vianney. He rose from his seat, his calm demeanor cracking under the weight of his emotions. "Distance myself," he repeated, his voice rising. "You're asking me to turn my back on my own flesh and blood? To abandon my daughter for the sake of appearances? Is that what the church teaches us? To forsake the innocent for the sake of reputation?" Bishop Michael frowned. His tone remained even. "Father Vianney, this is not about forsaking anyone. It is about upholding the sanctity of your vocation. As a priest, you are bound by your vows. Your role is to serve the church, not to raise a child." Father Vianney's anger flared. "And what of my role as a father? Does that mean nothing?" Chisom did not choose to be born into this situation. She deserves the love and protection of her father. If I abandon her now, what kind of a man does that make me? The room fell silent, and the council exchanged uneasy glances. Bishop Jude, one of the senior clergy, spoke next. "Father Vianney, your dedication to the church has never been in question, but you must understand the wider implications. If you insist on being part of Chisom's life, it will bring continued scrutiny and jeopardize your ministry. The church must come first." Father Vianney's gaze hardened. "If the church cannot accept my humanity, then what kind of institution is it? We preach compassion, yet we abandon it when it becomes inconvenient." Bishop Michael leaned forward, his expression grave. "This is not a matter of compassion, Father. It is a matter of obedience. You must choose your role as a priest or your role as a father. You cannot have both." The tension in the room was palpable. Father Vianney's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. He had given his life to the church, dedicating himself to its teaching and mission, yet, in Chisom, he had found a love that was both pure and undeniable. "I cannot abandon her," he said finally, his voice firm. "I'll fight for my daughter, even if it costs me everything." The bishops exchanged glances, their expression a mix of frustration and resignation. Bishop Michael sighed heavily. "If that is your decision, Father Vianney, then we have no choice but to recommend that the suspension remain in place indefinitely. The church cannot condone this." Father Vianney stood his ground, his eyes blazing with resolve. "Do what you must, but I will not walk away from my daughter." As the meeting ended, Father Vianney left the room, his heart heavy, but his resolve unshaken. The decision he faced was monumental: to relinquish his priesthood for the sake of his daughter, or to comply with the church's demands and lose the one person who mattered most to him. Days later, whispers began circulating within the parish. Father Vianney had not returned to the rectory, and his absence was keenly felt. Speculation grew as parishioners debated whether he would resign or fight to stay with the church. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Father Vianney sat in a small study. A letter opened before him. The words he had written were heavy with finality. As he gazed at a photo of Chisom, her bright eyes filled with innocence and joy. A tear slid down his cheek. He made his decision, one that would change the course of his life forever. The next morning, the diocese received an envelope marked with Father Vianney's name. Its contents remained undisclosed, but the weight of his decision left the bishops in stunned silence. In the village, Rebecca cradled Chisom in her arms, her heart heavy with guilt and love. Meanwhile, whispers of Father Vianney's fate reached the parish, leaving everyone on edge. Had he chosen the church, or he had chosen his daughter?